This is Spencer with The MacGuffin, and today I'm joined by director Kimberly Pierce. Let's get that nice and clear. You might know her from Boys Don't Cry. You might know her from Stop Loss. She's now directed the new Carrie update. I wanted to start, though, by sort of a little bit of a bigger picture in that. Before you approached this project, were you a horror fan? Did you love the original Carrie? Had you read the King book? Or was this something that you sort of embraced as the opportunity got to you?
Well, the answer is yes to all the original questions, which is I'm a huge horror fan. I love, Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I love The Omen. I love Rosemary's Baby. I love Halloween.
All that stuff, yeah.
All that stuff is really fantastic and fun. I love the thrill ride that you get with horror. But I'm also a Stephen King fan. So I was a big reader as a kid, literature student at University of Chicago. I've read a lot of Stephen King's books. And in particular have read Dance Macabre, which is this amazing group of... it's this amazing book that he put together looking at horror in radio, TV, film, and literature, and it will blow your mind.
Wow.
Just his encyclopedic knowledge of it and just how entertaining it is.
Very cool.
And his book on writing. So, but of course, the Carrie book is just one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, really definite defining one, especially for him. I mean, it launched his career. Was that sort of an intimidating idea to come into then? I mean, you're a fan of the genre. You love the original material. I'm not going to say like your past work would make it more difficult, but your past work was much more personal, much more sort of grounded in reality. What was that sort of transition like in sort of like mentally preparing yourself to do this once you got the project?
I mean, of course it's going to be daunting. It's a classic, and particularly because I love story and I love characters, and I'm madly in love with Carrie White, this misfit social outcast who wants what we all want, which is love and acceptance, and just has a hell of a time getting it. At school with the kids who give her a hard time, with her mother who loves her deeply but is terrified that she's evil and has fundamentalist nature to her upbringing, which is challenging. I love the mother-daughter story. I love that Carrie loves her mother and is trying to break free but always in conflict with her. I love the superpower origin story. She's discovering that she's got these powers and kind of like a talent that's going to kind of make the world maybe okay for her. And then the Cinderella nature of it. So she goes to the prom and she's...
Very different end of that ball.
Well, exactly. She wants to wear the beautiful dress. She wants to dance with the handsome boy. She wants to have that dream night come true. And interestingly, our relationship to her is we want her to succeed. We want her to have the most amazing night. We love it when she gets prom queen. But at the same time, we're also waiting for it to all come collapsing down. We love that the Cinderella story is turned on its head, which is a really interesting thing that we want to see her at her moment of absolute joy, and then we want to see it all taken away from her. And then we want to see her get angry and upset, and we want to see those powers leak out, because I think at the end of the day, we love a sense of justice. We love a revenge tale.
It's sort of interesting, and one of the sort of interesting, I don't know if, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't know the direct quote, but I saw someone talking about how you've said that you love The Godfather because it's a family drama within a gangster film. I think that's a really eloquent way of describing it. Do you sort of see a similar sort of perspective towards this film? You're talking about these underlying stories. I mean, overarching, there's obviously this revenge story, but there's all sorts of things, the mother-daughter story you talk about. Was that one of the things that really hooked you with this, is that on the surface it's just like this elaborate revenge story, but really there's quite a bit of heart and pain and all sorts of emotional underlying parts?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, I love that it's a horror movie and that I get to tap into that genre. I love that it's a revenge tale, and that's really fun. But for me, it's always about character and story. So it's always about a protagonist that I absolutely love, because they, to me, are the engine that drives the story. So her desire for love and acceptance, the fact that she'll do anything to get it, the fact that she'll even put herself at risk when she knows she's got these superpowers. I mean, you have an engine there that is ferocious and is entertaining. So, of course, I love Carrie, then I love Carrie and her mother, and then I love Carrie and then the girls who torment her, but then, of course, one gets guilty. And rather than apologizing to Carrie, which is what we know she should do, She does what rich people do. She has privilege, and she says, why don't I donate my boyfriend to you?
Yeah.
That's not a good solution, but it's a solution. It's a half measure that powers the story. I love the bad girl, Chris.
Yeah,
I love that every time
excellent.
somebody takes up Carrie's cause, Chris gets angrier and angrier and escalates her attack. So you're right. It's all the layers that would attract me to it.
Carrie's kind of an interesting character in the genre of horror because on one hand she's a victim and on the other hand she's kind of a villain. I mean, if you consider the last perspective of the last half of the film. What is it like sort of trying to create a character that's empathetic, sort of fits in both camps, because it'd be very easy to skew her as just purely a victim or just purely as this ferocious villain. What is it like sort of trying to balance that and make her empathetic to audiences?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is I think rather than actually thinking of her as a victim or a villain, to think of her as a protagonist. Because really what a protagonist is somebody that we love deeply and who undergoes something, right, and then has to take a retaliation or has to take an action in response to that. So if we empathize with Carrie, if we love her and we want to see the dream come true, then when the dream is destroyed, we want her to take revenge. So to me, the revenge tale only could work if you love the main character, and that was why it was so important to cast Chloe Moretz, because she makes you want to adopt her. You want to take her in, and it's true. Everybody was like, you're going to fall in love with her. Do you want to talk to the other directors who worked with her? And I was like, I don't want to talk to the other directors that worked with her. I want to have my own relationship with her, and why do I need to fall in love with her, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cut to, I'm totally in love with Chloe. I want to adopt her. It's just, she has that effect on you, which is probably because of who she is. She's inherently charismatic. She's charming. She's such a hard worker. I love that in an actor. She's so good at, but also she's in a really wonderful family and they give her that. So it's a very interesting thing to see somebody so ensconced in the entertainment business, but in a way so protected.
One of the sort of interesting challenges I would sort of perceive from the outside of this film is the last half of this film is so iconic and so beloved. What was it like trying to basically work out a first half that would keep people engaged and not just constantly being like, when's she going to go crazy? Looking forward to Carrie going crazy. Because it seems like that would be what everyone would look forward to with this film coming out. But you have to build up to that.
I always think the best thing you can do, really, when you face a problem, which filmmaking is nothing but problems. I mean, it just is. You wake up every day, you know what you say? How am I going to get the equipment? How am I going to get the actors? When's the equipment coming in? How am I going to get my shots done? And it's never that you wake up and it's all solved. It's always difficult. So I think that in particular, if you're saying, well, how am I going to structure the first half? Because I know that they're waiting for the revenge tale. Well, then you embrace the challenge and you say, okay, why don't we just accept the fact that there is a major gear that's going to kick in the second half that everybody wants to happen and that they want to get there as quickly as possible. So in fact, when you're editing it, you're looking at your watch and you're saying, this thing has to be tight. It has to be lean, and we have to get to that point quick enough. Well, what do we have to do before we get there? We got to get you to fall in love with the protagonist. We've got to get you to care about her circumstances and want to see her succeed. We got to get you engaged in that mother-daughter relationship that they love each other, but they're at odds. So, I can add some ferociousness there. I can add some conflict and some fighting there. That'll keep them engaged until we get to prom. I can add the superhero origin story. Oh, here's a girl who's a misfit and her superpower is the only thing that's going to make her feel good in the world. Let me add some scenes. Let me add some exploration. And let's make the superhero aspect of it engaging. So I'm using the mother-daughter relationship to stoke your interest and to heighten your investment. I'm using the superhero origin story to get you engaged. But you're waiting in the back of your mind for the revenge tale. Yeah. And I'm making you invested in the Cinderella tale, knowing that the better the Cinderella tale is, the more satisfying the revenge.
Do you think it's a really key decision in picking you, someone who had an investment in the project or in just Carrie in general, because it could be a crutch to have that end scene? Everyone knows it's like, as long as we really knock that one out, people aren't going to care what we do first. But to have somebody who actually passionately cared about telling Carrie's story to make it a film that's more than just one great scene?
I think so. And I also think that the one great scene can never be a great scene unless the lead up is great to it. I mean, I just think movies are they're just a series of dominoes. And that was why I added a new scene in the beginning, which we're not going to tell anybody what it is. But I'm really proud of that because I was reading the book and I was like, my God, this is the opening scene. So I wrote that. I talked to Julianne. She was like, if you can get them to pay for it, let's shoot it. And that's always, that's part of my job is to, in the best sense, is to understand the mechanics of the story and to explain to the studio, guys, this is where we should start because this is where that relationship begins. And that relationship is the spine of the movie. So I feel pretty confident that when they came to me, they knew I would be passionate. They knew that I would make sure, and working on the adaptation and rewriting it, make sure that the story works. And I love actors. I mean, it is just, I'd say I love writing, but I also love acting and actors. So hopefully what they saw was the fact that I would take it seriously and be utterly respectful to the classic because I feel I have to deliver. And then, of course, I bring in Julianne, I bring in Chloe, Judy Greer.
I love Judy Greer in the movie.
Judy Greer.
She's great. Yeah,
she's human.
fantastic.
She's funny. I'll tell you, anything about Judy Greer is so great. When I first met her for lunch, she was already telling me the character. And I was like, oh, wow, so you've done a lot of thinking about the gym teacher. And I was like, well, what do you think? And she was like, I have it all worked out. She was just like, I don't really care about my job anymore. She's like, I'm coming to school and I'm not even wearing the gym outfit. I said, okay. And she's like, and I'm probably smoking in the hallway, in the intermissions. And she's like, I'm basically focused on going to Mexico with my friends because that's what I save my money for is my vacations. So I'm in love with her at this point.
That's fantastic, yeah.
But then she's also saying, but then I fall in love with this girl. Like she said, I get so angry when those girls do that to her and I just want to protect her and take her under my wing. And she said, I stopped thinking about going to Mexico.
Yeah, she has a way of transitioning between comedy and drama that is just phenomenal in basically everything she does. She does such a subtlety that is
it's
incredible.
Wonderful. And it's infectious, and it's why when she then takes on essentially a moral role of taking care of Carrie, you don't find it annoying, you find it engaging. You find it endearing because she's layering it with humor. And it's the same thing with Julianne. Margaret White is a very intense character. She loves her daughter, she fights with her daughter. She mutilates herself, right? Which is a whole new thing that we added. Yeah. She bangs her head. She cuts herself.
Yeah, the cutting was really intense.
It's great, right? Yeah. She's digging into her leg. Oof. Well, so a character like that could be kind of one-dimensional. But just like with Judy Greer, you bring in Julianne Moore, who's such a fantastic actress, has so much warmth, has so much depth, and all of a sudden that's a three-dimensional character who you care about. What
was the learning curve in terms of executing that final sequence? I mean, not to say that like directing is, just a flat plane, you understand everything once you've directed a movie, but like your first two films were not supernatural, let's say. So there's probably a lot of practical effects, a lot of CGI, special effects, all sorts of stuff to execute that final sequence. What was it like in terms of getting up to speed to make that to your satisfaction? Was it just an element of watching other people's work and sort of breaking it down? Was it getting the right people involved? What was that like?
Well, I was lucky in that on my last movie, Stop Loss, because it was a war film, I had a lot of guns, I had a lot of explosions, I had a lot of shooting, I had people being blown up, moving through the air. So I had done wire work, I had done explosions. That stuff I was familiar with, and I had already worked on green screen. This was obviously of a whole other order, so what I did was I studied as many recent films as I could to understand how they work. I made sure with Dennis Berardi, who runs Mr. X in Canada, that I was in his studio all the time saying, show me what the effects are going to look like. And then I started to really think and be able to write in the digital realm, right? So for instance, there's things in the movie that I don't think you've seen before. So a girl, Carrie has to stop the villains from getting away. She can't fly. She doesn't have a gun. She doesn't have a rope. So she has the ability to displace the world. So she stamps on the ground and she creates a fissure. Well, that's not something I'd ever seen, but I go back to physics in the natural world. And so I gathered all these images of the atomic bomb explosions. So I understood how her powers emanated out. Then I also got earthquake photos. So when you saw these gashes in the earth that nature had made, I sent them to Dennis and I said, everything has to come from physics. Okay, now let's work backwards. Let's get a storyboard artist in. Let's come up with lots of images. I do that. Okay, this is what it should look like, but that's how I write. And then also let's get some great storyboard artists, right? And then let's bounce these ideas around. So let's draw the action figures. Let's draw the storyboards. Let's have the visuals. Now he starts doing something called an animatic, which is great. So he cartoonizes my pictures, and they make them move in real time, right? And he cuts them up, and all of a sudden he has like an actor, go in and do voices. And you begin to see it in a three-dimensional realm, and you're like, that needs to move faster, that gash needs to be bigger, this, that spatially doesn't work. So you're writing it and you're directing it in an animation, then they start sending it back, and that's when you really start working on timing. Okay, or like the knives.
Oh, yeah.
She lifts the knives and they come around, and I was like, oh, well, that's like stuff I've seen in Fantasia. So I'm pulling from Fantasia. But also, what's the great Steven Spielberg movie? What's the great one? The guy has the rope and the one has the gun.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Raiders of the Lost. No, is that?
I don't want to get it wrong. So a brilliant Spielberg, Raiders, but it's that moment of all these things line up, and you're like, oh God, this is going to get me. Well, that I said what was like in Fantasia and in other movies where if a bunch of airplanes were lifting off the ground and they were all being controlled by the same person, and they went into a formation, so we put the knives into a formation. Well, those are words to begin with.
Interesting.
But then you talk to your CG people and you say, let's see the choreography of that. And actually, I started doing it. I would say to them, guys, just move little green dots through the frame, because when you go to what's called a full render, it's exhausting to everybody. It's expensive. So I'm like, show me the green dots. And they're like, no, you're the director. We want you to see it all finished. And I'm like, guys, I watch rehearsals. I need to see bodies moving through space and time. So it was an uphill learning curve, but it was just a blast to make it as exciting as possible.
Maybe an animated film is what should be next.
Yes.
So the film comes out October 18th.
Yes.
Nationwide. What is next for you? Do you have anything or any place that people should keep track of what you're up to? Twitter or anything? Yeah,
you can track me on Facebook. That's a good way. I'll post a lot of stuff. I have a very fantastic fan site, and I have a great site that somebody did called KimberlyPierce.com, but we're in the moment of updating them. So I don't think that they should go there yet. Just go to my Facebook page. I post everything, and I'm working on an amazing cyborg movie.
Sounds awesome.
And then a romantic sex comedy. We'll see if I can get that one done.
The Judd Apatow thing. Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I wish you the best of luck with Carrie and whatever come next. And check out more reviews at MacGuffin. That's MacGuff.in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
T-1000 can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. It's tight, don't even try to bite the cycle style. Mr. Spock can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels all